Today I'm going to be listening to another piano piece. This one is actually a collection of piano pieces by Copland called Four Piano Blues, the latest of which was written in 1948. I think the whole collection might have been published a little bit later. This is what the Boozy and Hawks version looks like. When I purchased this for myself to play, it only cost $11. Gives you a sense of how old I am. Yeah, my piano teacher was really keen on me learning one of these. And I guess I've just sort of had the collection ever since, and I've never really taken the time to just listen to them all or to like appreciate their place in history or what they meant to the composer. This is our first Aaron Copland episode, so I am going to talk a little bit about him. And these are also dedicated to a number of different people who I would like to research. So the first blues is for Leo Smit. Its tempo indication is freely poetic. It's about 3 pages. Yeah, like I suspected, Aaron Copland published this in 1949. And then the second one is dedicated to Andor Földes. Yeah. Marked soft and languid. Oh yeah, they also have years. So this one was written in 1934. The first one, it looks like it was written in 1947. So they're not chronological. They're just sort of assembled. The third one was the one that I tried to work on. You can see this was like back when I struggled to even read notes. Well, I guess this isn't evidence I was struggling to read. This is more like my piano teacher forced me to analyze the chords, like that even mattered. Now I've done enough composition to realize this is like very like unnecessary to play the piece because clearly Copland would have just been thinking with voice leading and using his ear. But yeah, this one's dedicated to William Kapell, and it's only 2 pages. It was written in 1948. Must be the latest one. And then the fourth one is the oldest. It's for John Kirkpatrick, and it's from 1926. So normally on this channel, I also talk about the dedicatees. I've never had 4 dedicatees in a single piece before, so it's going to be a long one. But there you go. It looks like this was a part of a collection released in the year 2000 that had something to do with Copland. I mean, I would assume all of these scores had this caricature of him on them as well. Okay, so I'm just going to read out some of the Wikipedia for you here, so you get a sense of where these pieces came from. So the first 2 pieces were written in 1926 as separate movements of an incomplete suite for piano titled 5 Sentimental Melodies, and this work was largely drawn from other melodies extracted from Copland's piano concerto. Copland published the first blues and left blues number 2 unpublished. The other piece was entitled Hommage Mio, which he revised again in 1934. So that's why that movement had the 1934 date, not 1926. And then the other 2 pieces, which sort of bracket it, as we observed, like movements 1 and 4, are the basis for some of the melodies in his clarinet concerto, which was completed a year later, or what was completed in 48. And then, yeah, he revised them, published them under Boozy and Hawks in 49. And yeah, I think this Wikipedia has a link to each of the dedicatees, so why don't we start there, and then I'll give a little bio of Aaron Copland as best as I can. So Leo Smit was an American composer and pianist, born in 1921, died in 1999, born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he performed a great deal of Copland's music, it looks like. Andor Földes was a Hungarian pianist born in Budapest who later took up American citizenship. He was born in 1913 and died in 1992. And his debut was the Mozart Concerto with the Budapest Philharmonic. And he's won a number of awards, and he wrote some interesting books, it looks like the Keys to the Keyboard, a book for pianists with explanatory music. And he published a number of other things in the Musical Quarterly, Etude magazine. He published a couple pieces on Bartók and Kodály in Tempo back in the 1950s. So interesting guy. Looks like a little bit more decorated than Leo. William Kapell is even younger than the other two pianists. He was born in 1922, but he died very young in 1953, so in his 30s. He was an American classical pianist, and I guess there's not much to say about him because he died so young. Was born in New York. I assume he was based there most of his career, and very decorated even by the time he died. Uh, I guess it looks like he suffered from asthma and rheumatic fever throughout his life and had a serious lung condition. Towards the end of his life, he toured Australia, giving 37 concerts in 14 weeks. I should also mention that the previous guy, William Kapell, would have still been alive when Copland published these, dying 4 years later. So that's kind of interesting historical footnote. John Kirkpatrick is the oldest pianist on the list. He was also a music scholar who championed the works of Ives, Copland, Ruggles, and Roy Harris. And he gave the first public performance of Ives' Concord Sonata. His dates are 1905 to 1991. So interestingly, like this volume of pieces was sort of like a republishing of them in 2000. All of these dedicatees and Copland were dead at this point, I'm pretty sure. Let me see if Copland outlived all of them. But Copland did not outlive all of these pianists. He died in 1990, and he was born in 1900. So it makes sense that there would be this anniversary of his birth kind of issuing of scores in 2000. He was a composer, critic, writer, teacher, pianist, and he conducted his own music. All of you probably are familiar with Appalachian Spring. And Fanfare for the Common Man. He's probably most known for writing those two pieces. He first studied with Ruben Goldmark, but then traveled to Paris, where he studied with Isidore Philipp and Paul Vidal and Nadia Boulanger. So he was part of that sort of generation of American composers who studied with Nadia. He at first composed in a modernist style. I think he has some piano variations or something that are 12 tone or atonal, if I remember. But I think he pivoted during the Great Depression for obvious reasons, like writing in this modernist style was not profitable anymore. And he pivoted into his signature style, which is heavily influenced by Carlos Chavez. We've covered Carlos Chavez on the channel before, and I wasn't familiar with Chavez's music, but after hearing it, it was very apparent to me that Copland actually is like very indebted to him and kind of derivative of him. And I think what drew Copland to these Mexican realist composers was political beliefs. He was a communist. I don't know where I'm going to find that in the Wikipedia article, but that's a very important part of his character. Is he's a communist person who was trying to write Americana, and obviously that's his like political message has not been communicated through his music, because it just sort of has come to represent any other American belief. Okay, so he did do some serial stuff in the post-war period after publishing these pieces even. So he did some 12-tone stuff in his piano quartet, his piano fantasy, and his connotations for orchestra, and also his inscape for orchestra. But he didn't use his tone rows in the traditional sense. I think he sort of just had a more idiosyncratic way of using them. Okay, so he never enrolled in any political party, but had generally progressive ties. Um, and yeah, it was very sympathetic to socialists. So maybe my categorization as a communist is off, but I don't know. I think a lot of composers around that time were communist, and it wasn't a particularly like controversial thing before the Cold War. So yeah, so I think my preconception of him was a little bit off. I thought he sort of like started 12 tone and then went tonal, but it was actually sort of like a back and forth. Like he went into his serial period in the post-war period, and then abandoned it. And before that, he was doing the populist stuff. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's about all I have to say, I think, about him and the dedicatees in this piece. Seems like an interesting collection, and it's something that as a young pianist I didn't think about, like I didn't even really understand why I was playing it, and I just was doing what my teacher was telling me. Hopefully, if you are learning these, this video can help sort of alleviate that student-teacher dynamic, and help you sort of take learning into your own hands. And yeah, I'm going to have a listen to them as a set and try to really appreciate them today, and I'll let you know what I think. So, and don't feel like you have to subscribe to any of my opinions, obviously. Recording is in the video description, and I'll see you in a little bit. All right, so my thoughts on this. Keep in mind that I am just doing this first thing in the morning, just listening to this. It's really nice to have with my coffee, honestly. It's just kind of very light music, honestly. I was sort of wrong about the order of pieces. I somehow got in my head that the two newer blues were 1 and 4, when actually they're 1 and 3. So it has this interesting form where you have like a newer piece and then an older piece, newer piece, older piece. The two newer ones that were written around the same time are, I think, the more mature pieces. They have like a more singular idea, and they're kind of like monothematic. Whereas the older ones are more like all over the place. They have a bunch of different themes and ideas. They're also more bluesy, I think, and more in the spirit of like blues music for classical piano. They're almost like little like preludes. I don't know if I'd call them songs without words or anything, because the ideas themselves are not that substantial. They're just very short little melodic ideas and figurations. But just glancing back through the score here, I do think the first movement is my favorite. It made me really think about the piano as like a melody instrument. And every time I heard the melody come back, I was imagining a different like orchestral arrangement of it, a different instrument that could play it. And something about the first movement just sounds very orchestral, and it begs to be arranged for a larger ensemble. And I think that's a very powerful ability that I don't have as a composer, and I kind of admire. And it's no doubt due to his like formal education in Paris that he's able to write piano music that sounds so orchestral. So that is my that's actually a general observation too. The newer ones sound like they could work for other instrumentations, whereas the older ones sound like just they're for piano. It's hard to imagine them for anything other than piano. So maybe more idiomatic, but also not as inspiring in my opinion. So that does it for Copland. This might be our only Copland episode, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're a fan of his music, um, tell me what to get into because I've always been meaning to uh, like explore it. So yeah, that'll be that. And then as we continue into the 1940s, let me just figure out what the next piece is here. Okay, yeah, so we have a variety of things in the 1940s piano repertoire, but the next one that's up is the this John Cage piece called Dream, which will be our third piece by John Cage, and will sort of make a nice little start of a John Cage playlist, I think.